There's a lot going on in the world of Magic the Gathering right now. We have big issues with the secret lair shocklands. There is a giant in-person $50,000 Magic tournament that's going to be happening, kind of like the old days of the GP. And we also have some issues with Wizards' newest partnership.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The Magic Historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends. I hope the day finds you well. We are in the weekend now, and it's time for some Mega Magic news. It's been a while since we've done one of these episodes, but a number of different items have kind of been accumulating, and it's time to go over everything. So let's start off with what's going on with the Shockland secret lairs, because it's kind of a mixed bag. The reports that are coming in are varied, and some people are actually in some ways almost better off because of the mistakes that are being made, but ultimately it still leads to bad feels and lost money for Wizards of the Coast. What I'm talking about is the fact that they just recently did secret lair Shockland bundles where you could get these different particular ones. Oh, get Shocklands, get these Shocklands, get these Shocklands. But when they got mailed out, multiple people are reporting missing particular Shockland sets. So it's like, yo, I didn't get my Jund Shocklands, but for some reason, I was sent multiple extra copies of this set of Shocklands. So there's situations where people are straight up missing one box of Shocklands, but instead they got two bonus boxes of Shocklands of a completely different type. There are other people who literally are just missing Shockland bundles. And then you have the third variety of people where they got the right amount of Shockland secret lairs, but they got doubled up on particular lairs and are missing out on the other ones. Now, in terms of levels of being upset, the people who are straight up missing a shock lair, that's the biggest level of frustration right there. Obviously, anybody who doesn't get what they ordered is going to be frustrated, but it moves up the scale, right? Like if you have two copies of one particular secret lair and you contact Wizards of the Coast, they're going to send you out the lair you're missing, but they're not going to require that you send back that bonus lair. So basically, you're going to be up one layer, and the people who are actually getting two extra copies, so in some cases 3 copies of one particular secret lair, are getting 2 bonus secret lairs, and these are Shockland secret lairs. So these are cards that are virtually guaranteed to maintain, at least to a certain degree, their secondary market value, because there'll be fewer versions of these Shocklands out there than the earlier printings. Although I guess if you go all the way back to the original Ravnica set where the first Shocklands come from, there may be fewer of those. It really does depend on how many of these were ordered. And also, now with these errors, it may be that certain of the secret lair Shocklands, there's like a higher population of them. Because if Wizards of the Coast is sending out a bunch of extra Grixis-themed Shocklands, or Grixis color-aligned Shocklands, then you're going to have more of those. So, it's a situation where it's kind of a you win, you lose, with the exception of the people who just didn't get the particular secret lairs. Most likely what happened was when they got packaged up, somebody took one that was meant for one box, put it in another. There seems to be a lot of issues with secret lair in terms of product delays, errors. I mean, if you just go back in the last week, I did a secret lair opening video where literally the Valentine's Day secret lair was missing Heliod, who is arguably the biggest and most important card in the secret lair. Now, the good news is Wizards of the Coast always makes it right with this stuff. They always send out what they're supposed to, so you don't have a scenario where anybody is going to lose out. But at the end of the day, you already have to wait so long for this stuff. So to wait forever and then be ultimately disappointed is not a good business move on Wizards of the Coast's part. And actually, that's not the only not good business move we're going to talk about in this video. So let's move on to the next subject, which is actually more of a feel good, let's see if the world is kind of going back to normal style story. If you guys haven't heard already, Channel Fireball is going to be having a giant Magic event. We're talking along the scales of the old school GP events. Now, They may not be quite as big, but it's still the same ambitious attempt to bring back old world Magic. And if you've ever been to these like GPs, or as they have more recently been called, Magic Fests, you'll know they are an amazing time in terms of getting to meet a ton of Magic players. Like, it's kind of staggering to go into a building and see like endless rows of Magic players. I've gone to some of these events when there were thousands of players there, which is, it's kind of crazy to look at it through like the lens of today's world. But either way, you go to these events, there's like a billion people there. There are tons of card vendors, so you have the opportunity to get all kinds of cards that are difficult to come by, and also the opportunity to cash in on some of the cards you have that may not be that interesting to people in your area. I always loved that. You know, you go and there's such a huge amount of people that you can just sit down at a table and spend the whole day trading if you don't want to play. Like, whatever it is you love about Magic, you could usually find at these events. They would have big name artists doing signings and stuff. I mean, the food aspect, they'd sometimes have like food vendors on hand, and the prices, the prices felt really high. But that was my biggest complaint about those style events. Now, Channel Fireball is bringing an event of that nature back. Now, it's probably not going to be on the exact same scale because they are going to have to worry about distancing measures. All that stuff is going to come up. I don't know how that's going to go. For me, this is serving kind of like as a canary in the coal mine sort of scenario, right? Where if you're not familiar, the idea of a canary in a coal mine is to let you know whether it's safe, right? So the idea is this a safe from a financial standpoint event to be having? Will we have enough people coming out for it? They're putting a bunch of money on the line. This is going to be an event that's happening in Las Vegas. It's a $50,000 Magic weekend that's happening between November 19th to November 21st. November's a great month because that's the month I was born in. So they're going to have like side events where you can do things like that. They're going to have the prize wall, which is another really cool thing that I liked at these big events, where they would have this wall where you can get things you normally can't get your hands on. If you've ever seen those gigantic oversized Magic cards, those things are really, really cool. I would love to have some of those to hang on the wall, but ultimately those things cost hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Or if you're playing in one of these events and you're trying to get it, you have to get a bunch of tickets, trade them in. It's kind of like, it works similarly to those places you would go as a kid where you'd play like skee-ball or whack-a-mole or whatever, and then you would end up just getting like these ticket payouts, but almost always you barely get enough tickets for anything. You know what I mean? You just get like, I can get a little flippin' cricket or whatever. The only time that I ever had a scenario where I didn't end up with a pitiful amount of tickets was when I went to this place that was kind of shoddily run. So the machines would end up kind of like jamming up and stopping. And a lot of people just wanted to play the games, I guess, and didn't care about the tickets. So if the machine jammed up and didn't give them tickets, they just be like, whatever, go on to the next one. So we're wandering around playing different games, and every time a game jammed up and didn't give me my tickets, I'm like, no, I'm gonna go and get an attendant. So the attendant comes and fixes it, and all of a sudden it just starts paying out all of these tickets from all the other people who didn't care that it was jammed up. So I ended up with a crazy amount of tickets one time, and I used it to get a big old turtle. So that's my story of Ticket Town. Anyhow, that's the kind of concept they use for the prize wall. Build up enough tickets, you can get the oversized cards. But unlike those little concession places, you actually can get stuff off these prize walls. So to me, it's cool they're bringing that back. Now, the $50,000 aspect of it is broken down into two $25,000 events. One is going to be a Crimson Vow sealed. So it'll be a sealed event using the upcoming Crimson Vow set, which will be out obviously in November. And the other event is going to be a 25K modern event. So there isn't like a main standard event for this. And admittedly, I don't know how many of these GPs and things like that actually had like standard events. To me, the least appealing part of these gigantic events was actually playing in them. Truthfully, a lot of time I would go down there just to have a great day of trading, running into people I hadn't seen in forever. Because when you go to these huge Magic events, you will run into people who have traveled from like miles around to be at these events. I remember remember we used to take the trip, because this stuff would happen up in Toronto. So we would take the trip from where I am, and it's literally like 100 and something kilometers to get to Toronto. It takes over an hour to drive there. So we'd get up super early and go on a road trip out there. Again, my main focus was just trading and interacting with other players, building up my collection, all that kind of stuff. I never really played in the big events. I mean, I did once, but I felt like it really wasn't for me. After a while, I'm just like, I don't want to play Magic all day. I want to go out and interact with people and trade and have a good time. And honestly, it was a fantastic way to acquire difficult to find cards for my cube. You know what I mean? You sit down with somebody who's got like a big suitcase full of binders and foils and stuff, and you're like, oh yeah, look at all this glory. Anyways, as you can tell, I'm a big fan of this event, and it shows as well that you don't have to be a hardcore competitive Magic player to enjoy these events. So for me, I'm glad to hear that these are going to be returning, and I'm also curious to see, like, with the distancing and everything they're going to need to do, because they do have that posted there. They're going to make sure that everything is clean, everyone has a certain amount of distance, which I think is a great idea. So I want to see if this can actually bring those events back, because I miss them, honestly. In the last one I got to go to was in 2019, and I actually got to hang out with another YouTuber, Legendary Mana, although he changed his name to Galaxy Games. But anyways, I got to spend the day hanging out with him, meeting people at the fest, trading, doing all that great stuff. Like, I had a very enjoyable time. So I want these events to come back. So I will admit that I'm rooting for this to be successful. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is Wizards of the Coast's newest partnership in terms of Magic the Gathering online tournaments. They have hooked up with a website called Matcherino. But unfortunately, someone made the attempt to do a big online Magic tournament just with Matcherino recently, in the last couple of days, and it just fell apart. It didn't work at all. They were trying for however long. So people are going to be switching back to MTG Melee, which is what was used up until now. But since Wizards of the Coast announced their partnership with Matcherino, you have this situation where people are going, okay, you know what? If Wizards is actually teaming up with these guys, why don't we give them a try? Now, when I looked at MTG Melee's website and I looked at Matcherino's website, I can see why Wizards of the Coast chose Matcherino to begin with, because the whole front page is 100% just talking about monetization. We help you monetize, and like 50 different ways to make money. And we all know that currently Wizards of the Coast is in accumulate as much cash as possible because of Hasbro's 5-year plan. Basically, Hasbro said to Wizards of the Coast 3 to 4 years ago, you need to double your profits, like completely double them within 5 years. And actually, Wizards of the Coast has been doing a tremendous job delivering on that. And I just mean tremendous job from the perspective of Hasbro. It has led to a number of situations for us as players of the game where things are less favorable because Wizards of the Coast is trying to get as much money as humanly possible from us. So the Matcherino situation, we're going to have to see over time whether that gets smoothed out and it actually functions well for competitive online play. But we can see just from these multiple incidents here that Wizards of the Coast isn't really willing to have a full hands-on sort of hands on the reins when it comes to organized Magic, right? You've got Channel Fireball that's organizing these big events themselves without Wizards of the Coast specifically being involved the same way they were, where like Channel Fireball was working for Wizards of the Coast. And then you have the fact that Wizards isn't spending the money to try and develop their own platform or expand their own Wizards event reporter to be used on a larger scale. Instead, they're turning to like third-party organizations and saying, hey, let's have you do everything. You'll handle all the billing, the payments, and whatever. And I mean, from a corporate perspective, that's great, right? It basically reduces your overhead. But if it can't deliver on the level it needs to, it's not a good choice. Now, since this is a news video, and I am a professional newsman, you may notice sometimes when you watch news, they'll put like a little jet ski and squirrel or something at the end of the news to kind of perk you up, make you feel better. So, for our little kind of feel-good moment, let's take a look at what they've done with the newest bundles. Inside the bundles for Innistrad Midnight Hunt, the inner wrapping, or outer wrapping I should say, instead of having actual artwork, it has a mask you can construct, which obviously you can see on the screen right now. This was posted on Reddit by the name that's on the screen. I can't read it. It's too far away on my screen right now. But anyways, my old man eyes have betrayed me. This is the harvestide mask. And I think it's actually a really cool concept. There are some people who are unhappy about it because up until now, the outer wrappings of all bundles have been artwork. So you could just keep adding them to your wall. I remember I did that with a whole bunch of bundles, right? But in this case, I actually really like it. I find it to be a quaint and fun concept. The idea that you can have your own little harvestide mask, arts and crafts style. And when I look at it, I really dig the vibe of it. You've got the autumnal feel with the autumn leaves on either side of it. You've got like a little bird skull in the middle. You've got the little fangs down at the bottom, which are actually movable. You can position those the way you want them to be. And then you have those antler stags at the top that have been painted with little bits of white and black paint. And I really just love the artistic style of it. If you've ever played the game Don't Starve, it has real genuine Don't Starve vibes like overall. So for me, it's a win, but if you don't like it, I understand. Anyhow, that wraps up the news. Thanks for coming out. Big shout out to all my patrons for supporting my channel, and I'll see you all, my friends, next time.